We're going to talk about the hidden flavours of fluent English so that you can speak naturally without fear. Speaking English with fluency and confidence is like cooking a meal. You want to serve up something special that everybody can enjoy. So I'm going to reveal the ingredients that go into good speaking in English and help you remove some of the bad ingredients that nobody likes. Most English learners are not very good speakers because they neglect to practice the speaking skill. They spend too much time focusing on grammar and vocabulary. But most native speakers aren't very good speakers either because they take their speaking for granted. They can do the grammar and the vocabulary, well, mostly to a point, but they ignore all of the other aspects that go into good speaking. So as a learner, if you add some of these ingredients, you'll actually have an advantage over many native speakers who are focusing or who have taken for granted just one ingredient. So we're going to make our meal a bit more interesting. But first, we need the meat and potatoes, the basics. Now, this forms the foundation of every good meal. These are the things you need. So first of all, is what you're saying coherent? Does it make sense? I put coherent. Next, do you have all of the words that you need to express your ideas, to say what you want to say? I'm going to call it vocabulary, vocab. Then, can you put all of those words and ideas together in the correct structure or in a way that makes sense? So I'm going to call it grammar. Not everybody's favorite at the moment, but I think it's a vital ingredient. And finally, is your pronunciation clear enough so that other people know what you're talking about? And put pronunciation. So these ingredients are a great start for our meal. But if you go to a restaurant and they serve you just meat and potatoes and nothing else, no salt, no pepper, no seasoning, it's going to be pretty boring and you might not finish it. You might walk out. And your speaking skills the same. If you speak using just these basic ingredients, you might have a great message and it might make perfect sense, but people are going to get bored and stop listening, and then your message is lost. And that's where most of the native speaking population stop. They take these for granted and they don't develop any other areas of the speaking skill. So these things are great, you need them, but you've been ignoring how you serve them, the delivery. And if you're looking for the best way to practice your speaking skills, even if you're practicing on your own, I recommend my free ebook, which is called Solo Speaking Success, and I'll put a link in the description. You click the link, you put your email in, and I'll send you the PDF. So now it's time to add the salt and pepper, the herbs, the spices, the sauce. The first one, speed, and speaking too fast is a classic nervous tendency and can make understanding really difficult for the listener. Standard public speaking advice is to speak slowly, but this can be boring too. You captivate attention by varying the speed, fast and slow. Slow down to build suspense and emotion, and then speed up to build excitement. Next, pitch how high or low your voice is. You think, this is my voice, I'm a big man. Or, I'm a little lady and I can't change how my voice sounds. But I just did. And the truth is, you have a vocal range, but you just don't use it. When you explore your vocal range, your voice becomes more interesting. Volume. Nervous speakers are often too quiet. Your speech has got to be loud enough for people to hear you and appropriate for your surroundings. But you can create excitement and emotion by varying the volume. Use loud and quiet to keep your voice interesting. I've heard quite a few podcast guests now talking about the importance of volume. I think I heard a hostage negotiator and a charisma coach both saying that they use the volume or drop the volume, and it invites people or it encourages people to lean in and really listen and pay close attention to what you're saying. So here's a quick practical tip for how to practice incorporating some of these ingredients before we go any further. And I got this exercise from Vin Jiang. He says, read aloud and take just one of these ingredients, but cycle through its full range. This gets your voice used to it. I'll show you with pitch. Sounds weird as hell. She had once undergone minor surgery without anesthesia, forcing herself during the operation to review English irregular verbs. Now she tried to do the same by concentrating entirely on her notebooks. She thought about how they would soon be safe with her father, and this nice Hugo would go and get them for her. I won't do volume because the baby's asleep upstairs, but you get the idea. Now, obviously, we're not going to start talking like that, although it will get people's attention. But the idea is that we'll just start exploring the range and the possibilities of our voice. In normal speech, we're so constrained that these exercises just help us explore different parts of our voice that we're not used to hearing. The next ingredient is pauses. Use pauses to interrupt the continuous wall of sound with some natural breaks and pauses in speech. Pauses can be used to create suspense or add emphasis to particular words or phrases. The next ingredient is silence. Very powerful in negotiation and persuasion. Think of a work situation, or if you're negotiating the release of a hostage. Most people avoid uncomfortable silences at all costs. They fill any gaps in the conversation with empty expressions or filler phrases. This is just nervous noise. When you afford yourself time to think and become comfortable with silence, you convey confidence and your message lands with authority. The next ingredient is intonation. This is the melody of your voice, the rise and fall of pitch across the phrase. It gives a musical pattern to your speech and can be used not only to convey meaning, but also to keep your listeners engaged. Intonation's closely related to pitch. There is a pitch component to intonation, but they're not exactly the same thing. You could have the phrase entirely at the same pitch, and it could be high or low. But intonation is about the arc of the phrase and how the change in pitch conveys meaning and also how it can convey emotion. I watched one speaking masterclass, again I think it was with Vin Jiang, and he had an audience member who was trying to improve his confidence and his authority when he spoke. And the ingredient that was identified as making him sound nervous was a rising intonation towards the end of each phrase. Now this is always taught in the English textbooks as the way to ask a question. Questions have a rising intonation at the end. But this guy, it wasn't just for questions. Every phrase that came out of his mouth had a rising intonation. And it created great uncertainty in his speech. He sounded like everything was uncertain, and that's why rising intonation is associated with questions, because it's like, I don't know. But when you use that in everything, it creates weakness. So the advice there, or the training that was recommended, was to really practice even for questions, having a fall in intonation towards the end of the phrase. And that was how he learned how to communicate with authority or with more confidence. In all of these ingredients that I'm talking about, there's no perfect amount. There's no perfect volume, perfect pitch, or perfect length of pause that you can add. It's almost all about variety. And again, in the same way you wouldn't want to add all of these ingredients in at the same time. That might be overpowering. It's about having the basics right that we talked about, and then adding some of these extras just to make it a little bit more interesting and really deliver a more powerful message. Any pattern, no matter how good it is, will get boring. So you've got to take your listener on a bit of a journey and weave them in and out of some of these ingredients. Here's the takeaway. You need to make the shift away from overthinking the technical elements of English and pay some more attention to the delivery, because that's the bit that people will remember. Even just the emotion that you feel when you speak will be communicated in your tone. If you feel nervous and fearful, then that's what you're going to communicate. So even just by changing your facial expression to a smile can transform your communication. The only way to lose the fear is through practice. So watch this video next for the best way to practice your speaking skills on your own.